Welcome, everyone, to the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am your host, Gregg Schutze. This is episode 8 of the 2022 podcast series, where we take a look at the draft-eligible prospects and get you ready for the NFL draft. And I know it's not set to begin until April 2022 in Las Vegas, Nevada, but it's never too early to start talking about the draft. And I know it's been a few weeks since I've released the last podcast. We're almost to the end of September, but really needed to spend some time with the family. Now I'm back, ready to go ahead and deliver some more podcasts to you. So we're going to jump right into things. Now, we left off going over the top 10 by position. So we're going to pick up where we left off. Last podcast, we talked about the defensive line. We're going to get into the linebackers. We're going to start on the outside, talk about those 3-4 edge rushers coming off the edge there, along with the off-ball linebackers, the Sams and Mikes in the 4-3 defense. Then we're going to move inside, those inside linebackers, the Mikes. We'll talk about all of that as well. But we've got a lot of games to get through over the last 3 weeks of the season that we haven't really had a chance to talk about. And I know that we've got plenty of time to make up for some of what we watched over the last 3 weeks. And but I'm going to do my best to try to make it through and really kind of point out some of the guys that we really need to start paying attention to over the first few weeks of the season. Now, I'll tell you what, the first guy that really stood out to me watching UCLA play was Zach Charbonnet. And UCLA, he forced everyone to take notice watching them against Hawaii and then again against LSU. This was a guy who the physicality was really impressive coming downhill, but it was really the footwork. His ability to, the suddenness, especially with the lateral quickness, didn't really see that a ton at Michigan, really because they had a stable of running backs, and he really didn't get much of his shot there with the Wolverines. Going to the Bruins, he is sharing the backfield with Britton Brown, but what you like there with UCLA is they're actually allowing him to really do a lot there with the football, and it's really showing there for the Bruins. Now, the linebacker and a guy that we're going to be talking about, he's actually a defensive end there for UCLA, but he's going to be playing linebacker at the next level, and that's Mitchell Agude. A guy that people aren't talking about, but he's a guy to keep an eye out for. 6'4", 245 pounds. We'll talk about him more later when we get into the linebackers, but definitely a guy to be on the lookout for and watch out for sure. We've already mentioned Southern Utah's left tackle Braxton Lewis, a name that you need to know, 6'7", 310 pounds. What he did against Cade Hall there against San Jose State, what was tremendous. Also got to play against Arizona State. This guy looks like a legit left tackle and a guy that I think could potentially work his way into day 2 consideration. Hoping that he'll get an invite there to the combine and really be able to show off what he can do. As we work through the season, I'll tell you what, Minnesota, when you got to watch Daniel Fa'alele go up against Ohio State, that dude is big, he's physical, he's definitely a day 2 prospect, even though he's 6'9" and close to 400 pounds. Obviously the weight's going to be an issue, but man, that guy is just so massive. And when you think of guys like Orlando Brown Jr. and Phil Loadholt, guys like that, those are the guys that come to mind for me, and they may not test very well. But remember Daniel Fa'alele when we get into the draft conversation. He's a guy to watch out for. North Carolina going down to Virginia Tech early in the season. And I'll tell you what, Amare Barno really put his name on the map. Everyone in the draft community already talking about him, but that was a guy I thought he was explosive, coming after the passer, really giving Sam Howell a hard time, but I really love what he did against the run, being able to work his way outside to the perimeter, setting a nice edge against the run, and just making sure that he's keeping contained, and a guy that was able to make some plays in the open field as well. Amare Barno, another name to get to know. Michigan State, can we talk about what the Spartans are doing there in Big Ten play? My goodness, Kenneth Walker III, the transfer from Wake Forest, has been a revelation for Mel Tucker. And I'll tell you what, Coach Tucker has to be excited because now they have some balance to their offense. Jaden Reed, Jalen Naylor, Trey Mosley, showing off some of their skills there at the receiver position because they're no longer a one-trick pony. They've got a really solid running game. And Kenneth Walker, he's showing the explosiveness, showing the vision, the lateral cuts, and a guy who can make plays down the football field. I mean, look, against Northwestern, 264 yards and 4 touchdowns. You thought, well, maybe it's a fluke. Shows up against Miami and runs all over the Hurricane defense as well. Kenneth Walker is a guy that everyone's going to be talking about if they haven't done so yet. Make sure that you watch Sparty and keep an eye out for Kenneth Walker. He's one of those names that you have to know as we get closer and closer to draft day. Michigan, that's a team that's looking to be for real. They could challenge Ohio State. Ohio State looks a little bit vulnerable. We'll talk about them here in a second. Aiden Hutchinson, I'll tell you what, he and George Karlaftis, two big physical defensive ends who are just extremely athletic. The Big Ten really, those are two guys that I think could end up working their way into the top 10 just because of their athleticism, their ability to get after the quarterback, their ability to hold the point against the run. Very, very athletic guys. I'll tell you what, Daxton Hill is showing to be the real deal there at the safety position. Guy to keep an eye out for. Really feel bad for Ronnie Bell, though. The knee injury, I believe he went down in the Western Michigan game. Had a 78-yard touchdown there against the Broncos. He will be sorely missed. He was a guy that was really showing off some of his receiver skills and the speed, somebody to really take notice of. Penn State, we're talking about linebackers today, and they've got a stable of linebackers. That's really the heartbeat of that defense. Them and Jaquan Brisker, who's looking to be possibly one of the top 2 or 3 safeties coming off the board. I love what he can do against the run. I love his ability over the top, his physicality. He'll come up and hit you. A lot of fun to watch there. Penn State, I love what they did against Wisconsin. Then they go in and beat Auburn. Arnold Ebiketie is another guy coming off the edge. It just seems like Penn State right now producing edge rusher after edge rusher. They get the transfer from Temple. We'll talk about him here in a little while. Oklahoma struggled against Tulane, only a 7-point win against Nebraska. Spencer Rattler, look, he started off slow last season, and then by the end of the year, he was really picking things up and really getting into a groove. That's really what you're expecting to see there. He's got there's no shortage of talent there on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, I think Nick Benito, we'll be talking about him here in a minute. He's another guy that can get after the quarterback. You got Isaiah Thomas and Perion Winfrey up front, guys who can be off the board in the first 2 days of the draft. Guys to keep an eye out for sure. Maryland, Dante Demas is showing to be a receiver that you have to be taking notice of, a guy that should come off the board in the first 2 rounds of the draft, likely a second-round pick. And nice win there against West Virginia. West Virginia obviously was able to take down Virginia Tech. Bama, I'll tell you what, they looked strong against Miami. Everyone was thinking Bama was going to be the team that's going to show up, and it's Bama versus everybody else. But Florida really showed off an ability to make Alabama a little bit more vulnerable. I thought there were moments where Dan Mullen really was out coaching the Bama defense and the defensive coordinator Paul Golding. And with Bama, I'll tell you what, their top receiver, it's not John Mechie, it's Jamison Williams, a guy who just showing off that explosiveness. The transfer from Ohio State. Evan Neal, look, he had some battles with Zachary Carter, but still showing that he's a top 5 pick. Just excellent movement skills for a guy his size, 6'7", 340 pounds. Will Anderson, not eligible for this year's draft, only a sophomore, but man, the excitement is real with this guy. Virtually unblockable even against Florida. 7 tackles, 3.5 going for loss. Just, the instincts, the bend, the speed to power. He can do a little bit of everything. We'll talk about Christian Harris and Henry To'oTo'o. I think they're a little overrated right now for my liking. So we'll get into why that is here in just a minute. I'll tell you what, Kaiir Elam, though, looks to be the real deal there at the cornerback position. I think he'll end up being a first-round pick. Talked about Miami. They've had their struggles, are 1-2 on the year. Zion Nelson, the left tackle. It hasn't been because of him. I think he's been very athletic on the edge. One of the things that he gets in trouble with is the hands aren't always matching the feet. You get a little bit sloppy with technique, but there's no doubt that he is a tremendous athlete there at that left tackle position for the Canes. As we continue to move through the season so far, we talked about let's talk about Drake London. We've talked about him previously as a top 3 receiver in my book, and I'll tell you what, he's been absolutely dominant. Keaton Slovis really didn't distribute the ball to anybody else but Drake London, and it was kind of nice to see Jackson Dart come in in relief of Keaton Slovis there against Washington State. And Jackson Dart himself now down with the meniscus tear, and so Keaton Slovis is going to be taking over. But Drake London, look, 13 catches, 170 yards, 2 touchdowns against Washington State. And that was up in the Palouse, in Pullman, Washington, Martin Stadium. And he's big, he's physical, not the most technically sound route runner by any means, but and a guy that I don't think is necessarily going to win with his speed. But what you do have is just a physical specimen. This is a guy, he's big, he's physical, attacks the football in the air, very hard to bring down as well. He's a guy to keep an eye out for, and if he can start working on that route tree a little bit there at USC, I think there are big things that we could be seeing there out of Drake London, potential first-round pick there at the wide receiver position. Their outside linebacker, Drake Jackson, kind of an up-and-down season. We'll talk about him. I think his stock is on the rise now that Dante Williams is taking over as head coach. Mentioned George Karlaftis there at Purdue. A guy who's just fun to watch. If you haven't gotten a chance to watch him, definitely tune in and do so. DeMarvin Leal, look, he can play a 5 technique if you want him to. He'll line up as a 3 technique in a 43 defense. He's a guy that is explosive. The power in his hands is real, and he's definitely looking at like a guy who could end up coming off the board in round number 1. Georgia. Look, we talked about Penn State and their stable of linebackers. Georgia has the exact same thing. They've got 3 or 4 linebackers there that are going to get drafted high. But I'm the guy that's just so much fun to watch is Jordan Davis, a guy who is 6'6", 340 pounds, and I swear the guy probably could run a sub 540. He's so quick, so athletic coming off the football. Power in his hands as well to drive his man off the ball, but half the time he's beating guys off the line and shooting into the backfield. And the thing with it too is he plays with a lot of effort and a lot of intensity, and you love that out of a guy on that defensive line. One of the more athletic big men I've seen in quite some time. I think he's a guy, if teams aren't going after him, they should be. Now Clemson, against Georgia, they look pedestrian. They struggled there against Georgia Tech. I know there was the weather delay, but still, DJ Uiagalelei really struggling to get things going. I like what Joseph Ngata has been able to do, showing off that size, and I love the route running ability. Justin Ross is slowly coming along, but really it's that offensive line. That's one of the bugaboos there for the Tigers. Offensively, they really need to get that offensive line shored up. But I'll tell you what, defensively, they're a lot of fun to watch. You got Miles Murphy and Brian Bresee there up front. Brian Bresee is going to be a guy we're going to be talking about as a top 10 pick. The guy is so athletic up front and then has tremendous power in those hands. Andrew Booth is going to be a cornerback that we'll be talking about in next podcast. One of the better corners in this year's draft. Keishawn Boutte, I'll tell you what, that's another guy who at the receiver position looks to be the real deal, and a guy who needs to be on everybody's radar sooner rather than later. Iowa, look, Tyler Goodson showing off, as one of the better running backs there coming in out of the Big Ten. Tyler Linderbaum, the athleticism there at the pivot. He's definitely a guy that I think could potentially solidify himself as a possible first rounder. You see some of these centers that are coming along. I was actually surprised that we didn't see Creed Humphrey or Josh Myers or Landon Dickerson come off the board in round number 1. I think Tyler Linderbaum is the real deal, and there's a chance that we could see him come off the board in round 1. Iowa as well. Riley Moss with 2 pick sixes against Indiana. They've got some legit corners there on the outside. You look at Notre Dame, some struggles up front on the offensive line. I loved having the dump truck, Kane Madden, coming over from Marshall, the grad transfer. Kyron Williams looks to be legit. Even if he's not running the football well between the tackles, a guy that can be a factor in the passing game. A lot of fun to watch there. Jermaine Johnson, he's playing defensive end for Florida State. I think he'll be a linebacker at the next level. Had 7 tackles, 1.5 sacks, couple of tackles for loss there against Notre Dame. He's a guy that I think just outside my linebacker top 10, but a guy that you definitely need to know about. Ohio State against Oregon. I'll tell you what, Oregon kept running the same run play over and over and over again, and it kept working. It really concerns you. There's inexperience there at the linebacker position and in the secondary. I think Ohio State was vastly overrated. I think their offense is high-powered. CJ Stroud injured, won't be playing against Akron, but I don't think it's necessarily, obviously isn't going to matter against the Zips, but no offense to Akron, but Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave both look as advertised. Jackson Smith and Jigba also looking at like a fluid athlete. Look, 7 catches, 145 yards, 2 touchdowns against Oregon. Olave and Wilson also going over 100 yards in the game. I love Nicholas Petit-Frere moving to left tackle. I thought Thayer Munford, was a little heavy-footed and struggled a little bit with the speed. And so I love Petit-Frere moving to left tackle. Thayer Munford, though, even at the guard position, he's been struggling a little bit, I think, with the footwork and pass protection. Does a better job against the run. But I'll tell you what, the disappointments have been, Zach Harrison and Tyreek Smith, the edge rushers that everybody's high on. And yes, they are big recruits that came to Ohio State, and there are flashes, but they're just not producing the way that you would expect. CJ Verdell, he's shooting up draft boards, showcasing the hands, the speed as well, being able to run away from defenses. He's a guy that I think is definitely moving up those draft boards. And then in the secondary there for the Ducks, Verone McKinley. Look, this was a dude, that seemed to be everywhere there against Ohio State. He and Michael Wright going up against Mikel Wright going up against Chris Olave. It was really a battle, really a lot of fun to watch there. You really didn't see Chris Olave separate too much from Mikel Wright. He's another guy that we have to be talking about as we move forward. I loved what Iowa did against Iowa State. Really neutralized Breece Hall a little bit. Hall just was 69 yards on the ground in that game. Did have 5 receptions, showed off some hands, lost a fumble though, so you worry a little bit about ball security. Will McDonald, I didn't have him in my defensive ends. I thought that he was going to be more of an outside linebacker in a 34 defense, but watching him there against Iowa, look, had a 1.5 sacks. I really liked what he was able to do against the tackles there. Mason Richmond, Nick DeJong, even Jack Plum got in there a little bit, and the physicality, the power. He looks a lot bigger than he was a season ago. I think he can actually be a defensive end in a 4-3 defense, play with his hand in the dirt. So I wanted to make sure that I at least mentioned that because I didn't get a chance to talk about him previously. I thought Jackson Kirkland got whooped by Aiden Hutchinson. He's very athletic as a left tackle, but I think he reminds me a lot of Samuel Cosme in that he's more of a finesse tackle, not a whole lot of power to him. You look at his legs, he's got some smaller legs as well. And I thought Aiden Hutchinson, showcased speed, showcased power, and was able really to get around him at will. And that's why Michigan, big reason why Michigan struggled. And Michigan, pounded the Huskies, why the Huskies struggled. He's definitely a guy that I think hurt his draft stock a little bit because that was a showcase game for him. I think Trent McDuffie had a solid game in that contest. He and then Edifuan Olofosho had 13 tackles and a tackle for loss against the Wolverines. I think his stock is moving up a little bit as well. As we continue moving through the season, Cincinnati taking on Indiana. Indiana had the Bearcats on the ropes. Desmond Ridder really struggled with accuracy. I thought the athleticism obviously was on display. That's one of the things that you definitely see with Ridder, but the accuracy and just making some poor decisions at times, throwing into coverage, struggled there at times there against Indiana. But Indiana really fell apart when their heart and soul of their defense, Micah McFadden, went out to a targeting penalty. That's really what hurt them. But I'll tell you what, Ryder Anderson, I love him. That transfer that came in from Ole Miss. He's a guy that can kick, come off the edge there. Had 7 tackles, a sack, and a tackle and a half for loss there against Cincinnati. He's a lot of fun to watch. And then Darian Beavers. Is he a defensive end? Is he a linebacker? I think he'll end up being a linebacker. He reminds me a lot of Zaven Collins, and a guy that has that speed, can run sideline to sideline, can do a lot of things there. I think Darian Beavers is one of those guys that's going to be moving up draft boards. And, one of the receivers that I thought, I was putting him into my top 10, Ty Freifogel, some of the performances there in the Big Ten, I thought were tremendous, but I'll tell you what, Sauce Gardner, Kobe Bryant really shut him down. And, I think it speaks to the athleticism and the play there of Gardner and Bryant. But Freifogel, really, I think his draft stock took a hit. That was a showcase game for him, and it just didn't really pan out for him. Will Mallory, expecting a little bit more out of him there at Miami, not really seeing a whole lot in terms of his game. So I think in terms of that tight end group, that's a chance for him to make a statement, and really kind of missed out on that. Continuing moving through Mississippi State, they ended up losing that heartbreaker there against Memphis. Watched Charles Cross, and there were times where he was beaten where his hands got a little bit outside and would lose his blocks. But when he shot his hands inside, when he was playing with leverage, being able to keep his pad level low and bend at the knee, he was able to mirror his man, take off those, cut off those secondary moves. And I think Charles Cross, as that game went along against Memphis, really showed why a lot of people are excited about his play. And then finally, we get into Auburn. Yes, they lost to Penn State, 28-20 in that heartbreaker. Brisker with the pass breakup there right around the goal line. Again, the instincts showing up there. But I'll tell you what, Tank Bigsby, that running back, he's a guy. He's powerful. He runs hard between the tackles. A guy that's just so difficult to bring down. Really love watching him play. And then they've got a couple of linebackers there in Owen Pappoe and Nakobe McLean. Very athletic. McLean, another guy that went out due to a targeting penalty. I think that hurt Auburn a little bit there with some of the leadership in that linebacking core. Roger McCreary, though, looks to be legit and be the real deal there at the corner position for the Tigers. Oklahoma State, I said that we were done, but Oklahoma State, Boise State, a couple of safeties in that game to really make mention of. Colby Harvell-Peel, J.L. Skinner. Look, Skinner had 10 tackles, 2.5 going for loss, a pass breakup, a fumble recovery. He's a big physical safety. Harvell-Peel's converted linebacker. Two guys that I think could really surprise. Khalil Shakir continues to come along as a receiver, and a guy that I think we could be talking about as either a late third round, fourth round consideration at that receiver position. And then Arizona State, Jaden Daniels, I thought you saw some decent accuracy overall in the short to intermediate game. Did throw a couple of picks in that contest, but Rashad White, had 9 catches on the day, showed off tremendous hands in that losing effort there to the Cougars, losing 27-17 in Provo. But the hands to go along with the burst downhill, and actually shows off some decent footwork as well. I think that definitely has helped his draft stock. But Merlin Robertson, and he's one of those guys at that linebacker position, had a pick, and I thought he had a chance to go the distance, but man, he looked slow. He looked really slow, ran 60 yards, wound up getting caught from behind. He just did not look very fast going down the sideline, and that's one of the things that's a little concerning to me. One other linebacker who's just outside the group that I'm going to be talking about, Peyton Wilgar. 6 tackles, 1 going for loss, pass breakup, a guy who is really adept at getting to the quarterback, coming off the edge, bends pretty well, pretty stout against the run, can set the edge a little bit there, and then gets his hand into passing lanes. He was able to knock one of those passes down there against Arizona State. And then finally, how about that UCLA-Fresno State game? Game that just went back and forth. Fresno State was up at half, up big. UCLA comes roaring back. I thought Dorian Thompson-Robinson really struggled in that game. You see that. I just don't see him being a draftable prospect. He's a tremendous athlete, but just not a quarterback. But on the flip side, Fresno State's quarterback, Jake Haener, really showed off the toughness at that quarterback position. Got beat up in that game. I mean, just took hit after hit after hit. And, you could see him in pain as he was trying to throw some of those balls down the field, and ends up throwing a touchdown, I believe, with 14 seconds left in the game. Really a gamer, and one of those guys to where I think there's some physical limitations to the guy, but I think he'll end up getting a shot, likely as a priority free agent, but still a guy to keep an eye out for. Those Bulldogs, they just got edged out by the Ducks. They're for real, man. They're really showing that this team is for real. Ronnie Rivers, one other guy to mention there for Fresno State. He's kind of a shorter back. He's only, I believe, about 5'8", but he gets lost behind the defenders. Tremendous with his hands out of the backfield as well. Fresno State, keep an eye out for him. stoked because, that's a team that is, again, they only lost by 7 to Oregon, and a team that's going to be definitely there on the rise in the Mountain West, a team to be on the lookout for sure. So got through 3 weeks of action here in, I guess, about 15, 20 minutes. Obviously there's a lot more to cover, more detail to get into, but those were some of my observations throughout the first 3 weeks of the season. And obviously we've got some great games coming into the last weekend here of September. I'm looking forward to it, but what I want to do is transition now to that linebacker position, and let's really talk about my top 10. We're going to start with that outside linebacker position, and I'll tell you what, the first 4 or 5 guys are all edge rushers, because look, you can find guys in that off-ball linebacker position, but guys that are getting after the quarterback, that's where the money's being made, and that's, it's rare to find guys that can really get after the quarterback. Drake Jackson's a guy, look, if you look at the stats, just 8.5 sacks in his career, but look, 19 tackles for loss, and you see the athleticism. If you turned on that San Jose State game, what you saw there was a guy that was able to, he showed rush, was able to kind of contort his body and be able to pick off the pass there against San Jose State. Really fooled Nick Starkel there, the quarterback for the Spartans. Just read that screen coming across the middle, dropped into that passing lane, had a decent return as well, very light on his feet, dynamic change of direction to redirect, retrace the steps to pick off the pass. That was one of the things that was impressive. And then you saw a spin move after the catch as well. But Drake Jackson, I thought, was being misused. He was playing a lot more off the line of scrimmage, wanting to drop him into coverage a little bit more. And what you really saw was a lot of, as a result, you saw a lot of bull rush. Against Stanford, he struggled against Walter Rouse, the left tackle, was getting stuffed left and right there. When he was able to get the quick jump, it was usually against that right tackle, able to dip, get under that pad level, rip through, and then flatten out in a hurry to get to the quarterback. But you didn't see that consistently, and you really wanted to see him affect the game a little bit more. You saw that against Washington State. Once he was able to really get turned loose, you saw the speed rush, uses those hands to slap the left tackle's hands away, and then turns that corner, flattens out, gets a huge hit on the quarterback, sack fumble in the end zone, recovered by Tuipulotu for a touchdown. Huge hit on the quarterback there in the end zone, and really he was finally able to kind of showcase what he can do. So I thought that was definitely impressive. You also saw him against the run there. Max Borghi, first and goal at the 1 yard line. He actually took that left guard, Jarrett Kingston, drove him back into the backfield, able to get that arm free and drop Borghi for no gain. Did a really good job using his length. Look, he's 6'4", 250 pounds. And he could probably add some weight if you needed him to, but I really just want to see that explosiveness and that speed coming off the edge, because the guy behind him is really on his heels, and a guy that just has that sprinter speed, and you can't teach speed, especially as an edge rusher coming off the corner. And that's Adam Anderson out of Georgia, 6'5", 230 pounds. The junior, look, 13 tackles for loss, 11 sacks in his career, 3 sacks through 3 games there at Georgia. And what I just love about what Adam Anderson does is, this guy will be in a sprinter stance and coming off the edge, four-point stance, and just comes like a bat out of hell, able to bend. One of the things that I thought was really impressive against Clemson too was, left side of the line, came around the edge, used his hands on Shipley, the running back, tried to get over the block, kept coming, chased down the quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, after just a 3-yard gain. You love his ability to keep working to the quarterback. You see the change of directions. That's one of the things. Pretty fluid as an athlete, the hips, and not stiff at all. And what you love is that explosiveness, and really he's getting on that offensive tackle before he even knows what hit him. And then you watch the hands, so quick with those moves, the slap and the rip, He'll pull those hands down to get the tackle off balance and then just explodes into the backfield. Adam Anderson, to me, when you're talking about a prototypical edge rusher, he's the guy that you want to watch. The big thing for me, though, is he just a one-trick pony? Is he just the guy that has those speed rush coming off the edge, or can he really dominate against the run? Can he also drop into coverage a little bit? Haven't seen a whole lot of that from him. So that's one of the things that I'm looking for with Adam Anderson. But look, as far as that speed is concerned, it's absolutely ridiculous. Nik Bonitto out of Oklahoma, 6'3", 240 pounds, a guy who, 21 and a half tackles for loss, 15 sacks in his career, including 9 last season in 10 games, has 6 pass breakups as well. So he knows how to drop into coverage. And he's one of those guys to me that has a chance to really take his draft stock and elevate it to the next level. The defense there for Oklahoma, it's kind of a bend but don't break at times, but definitely a team that I think they showed last year that they were able to come on as the season went along. And as long as they don't trip up or slip up, that's really what you're waiting for, is for this team to really put everything together and explode. But Bonitto, he's one of those guys. He's so explosive coming off the edge, able to dip underneath the tackle's pad level, flatten out, get to the quarterback in a hurry. A guy who also just shows that effort. Against Tulane, chased Michael Pratt, the quarterback there, the Green Wave, all the way to the perimeter. Ultimately dove for the quarterback, who was ultimately able to shake off the tackle. But you just saw the effort. A guy that just never gave up on the play, was continuing to pursue. Against Nebraska, did a good job getting up the field in a hurry against the running back, able to drop him in the open field. That's one of the things that I thought was impressive. Then you saw the double, the secondary move, took that the right tackle up the field, gets by the quarterback, then gets a spin move back inside, nearly grabbed the quarterback looking to scramble his way. Pretty stout at the point of attack against the run. And when he was spying Adrian Martinez, that was really where you saw some of that explosiveness. He's spying him, and then, okay, he gets outside the pocket. I'm going downhill, and I'm chasing after the quarterback. And you just saw how quickly he could get on the quarterback and make a play. End of the game, 15 seconds left. He was spying the quarterback. Perion Winfrey forced the quarterback to flee. Then he closes in on Adrian Martinez for the sack. Ultimately, second to last play of the game, which preserved OU's win there over Nebraska. I think Nik Bonitto is one of those guys. Adam Anderson, I think the explosiveness, you can't teach that speed. But what Nik Bonitto has is he has more of a polished skill set, I think, than Adam Anderson does, or really what he's been able to showcase so far. So I think Nik Bonitto has a chance to really continue to move up draft boards. Amare Barno, 6'6", 245 pounds, the junior there for the Virginia Tech Hokies, number 11. Primarily a stand-up defensive end there for the Hokies. What I loved was, takes on the tight end block on a stretch play there by Ty Chandler in the North Carolina game, gets off the block, chases down the running back to drop him for a 2-yard loss on a run into the boundary. His inside move, you saw speed to power versus the left tackle, then a spin back outside to get to the quarterback who's trying to step up in the pocket. 18 seconds left in the first half, spying the quarterback on the boundary. Sam Howell decides he's going to go ahead and pull and run, and what you saw there was Barno closing in a hurry, arriving at Howell, then punching the ball free, which the ball ended up going out of bounds. They lost 8 yards on that play. And then the first play of the second half, spies Sam Howell at the line of scrimmage against the left tackle, comes off the block as Howell was rolling left. Nobody was open down the field, so was able to quickly get there, wrap him up, and take him down for a sack. Barno, what I love about him really going through all of that is, he's stout against the run. He shows off the athleticism as well to fight off blocks and be able to get outside, chase down running backs, keep them in front of him, as well, keeping them behind the line of scrimmage if at all possible. And then you see the bend coming off the edge with the speed rush. You see the speed to power as well. There's some versatility to his game. To me, I'm a big fan of Amare Barno and what he's able to bring to the table. Kingsley Enagbare is another guy there. South Carolina, 6'4", 260 pounds. A guy who pretty consistent in terms of his numbers, 19.5 tackles for loss, 13 sacks, has 2.5 sacks through 3 games this year for the Gamecocks. And really, when you have Enagbare, he's a big dude, but he's playing really that stand-up edge rusher there for South Carolina. I don't remember seeing him really putting his hand in the dirt at all. He was really playing standing up. But one of the most impressive plays, he was just so explosive coming off the ball. His hips were already turning and were square, to the quarterback, just coming right off the edge as he's avoiding the cut block by the left tackle Jamari Sawyer. And had he had a little bit more time, all he would have had to do was explode to the quarterback and really would have been able to punish JT Daniels on that play. Very sudden push-pull took Sawyer up the field, push-pull, and then able to get straight to JT Daniels there as well. The lateral move inside both the left tackle and the left guard, able to drop the running back for just a 3-yard gain. Inside rush, look, he's not just the guy that's going to try to get around the corner off the edge. He'll do those inside rushes, and uses those hands to get off the block and get into the backfield and pressure quarterbacks. I think Enagbare is poised for really a breakout season this year. Obviously everyone's been talking about him and want to continue to see him elevate to the next level. I think double-digit sacks isn't out of the question. Another guy, and look, I watched Arnold Ebiketie. I've mentioned him earlier, 6'3", 250 pounds. I thought maybe he might have to change up his game a little bit and be a 34 outside linebacker. He's starting to prove me wrong a little bit. I'm seeing a lot more explosiveness out of him, and it's making me reconsider things. I thought with Brian Burns just his lack of overall size, he put more size on him to ultimately be that edge rusher there in a 4-3 defense. But with Arnold Ebiketie, look, the Temple Owl transfer, what I really love is you see these arm overs. You see the stutter, arm over, beats the left tackle, getting inside off the ball, so quick to the quarterback, forcing a lot of throwaways. So look, even though you're looking at the stats, you're like, hey, he only has 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. It's not very impressive. One of the things with it was he was constantly in the backfield, constantly affecting what was going on with the quarterback, forcing him to either step up into the pocket. He was really running into the linebackers. That's really what you had was Ellis Brooks, Brandon Smith, Jesse Luketa. All those guys were having big games for Penn State, and a lot of it was due to number 17 coming off the edge. So a guy that I think is definitely should be on everybody's radar. Moving to number 7, how about Peyton Wilson out of NC State? We get our first off-ball linebacker, 6'2", 240 pounds. And look, I know that he's out for the year now, season-ending injury, so he's not going to be playing moving forward. And I think that's probably going to solidify his status coming back to the Wolfpack. But look, this is a guy who has incredible instincts. Reminds me of Luke Kuechly. He's not the athlete that Luke Kuechly is, but if you want to know where the football is going to be, you follow number 11, and he's going to take you right there to the football. Unfortunately, with that season-ending injury, he's likely going to be coming back to Raleigh, and I'm sure that the Wolfpack definitely happy about that. But look, about him coming back, not the injury. But you look at 2020, 108 tackles, 11.5 going for loss, 3.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, a guy who just has a nose for the football. And I really hope that he can return back to his form from 2020 because he's really a special player and a guy that I think deserves consideration in day 2 of likely the 2023 draft. But we'll see. There are stranger things that have happened. He may get into the process, may recover a lot quicker, may decide that he wants to enter the draft. We've seen that happen with a lot of players over the years, so we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens there with Peyton Wilson. DeMarvion Overshone out of Texas. Look, 6'4", 217 pounds, a bit undersized, looks a lot like a safety. He's got 10 pass breakups in his career, 3 forced fumbles, nose for the football, 3 interceptions as well, 16.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. So the guy plays all over the field. He reminds you a little bit of really a taller version of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, because he's able to do a little bit of everything and looks like a bulked up safety a little bit, but number 0 is flying all over the place. You'll see him blitzing, shooting through A gaps, run plays, getting off blocks, and really kind of that hybrid guy with that range and the versatility. That's really what I like about him. A quick twitch athlete, and that's really the way that the game's going, the way of the future for that linebacker position. He'll be a guy that I think will be comfortably there on day 2. Same with Terrell Bernard. Look, you want to talk about guys who had season-ending injuries. He only was able to make it through 5 games there in 2020. But look, that 2019 season, what was a stellar season there for the Baylor Bears with Terrell Bernard. 112 tackles, 9.5 going for loss, 4.5 sacks, a couple of pass breakups, 3-4 fumble recoveries, one of which was returned for a touchdown. And really through 5 games, he was a guy that I had on my radar. I actually had him in my top 10. 55 tackles through 5 games, 6.5 going for loss, 3.5 sacks. A playmaker, has a nose for the football. Another guy who's a bit undersized, but he has tremendous range, can play sideline to sideline, can play against the run, can play against the pass. You're going to see him filling holes as well. Really a 3-down linebacker, and a guy that I think should be in consideration as a late day 2 pick. Definitely a lot of fun to watch. 2 other guys, they're at that outside linebacker position. How about Boye Mafe out of Minnesota, and Brenton Cox out of Florida? 2 guys that are bigger. They're both 6'4". Mafe's got a little bit of weight on him, 265 to Cox's 253 pounds. Mafe, look, he's explosive. I think that's one of the things you see. 10 sacks in his career, including a couple so far through 3 games for the Golden Gophers. What I worry about with him is he a one-trick pony? Is he a guy that's really just going to get after the quarterback? And that's really, obviously there's a home for that. And I said at the beginning that that's where a lot of that money is going to be made, because if you get double-digit sacks, who cares? If you're able to get to the quarterback, you get those double-digit sacks. Look, Kabir Baja-Biamila was a guy that came in and was really just that mercenary, the guy that you bring in on passing downs and let him tee off on the quarterback. But with Boye Mafe, he's got incredible length. He's an incredible athlete. But what I worry about, I think he probably, because of that athleticism, because of the traits, you hear traits talked about a lot. But I look at him. Could he be a day 2 pick? Sure, because of the athleticism. But I think in terms of the production, I probably would likely want to spend an early day 3 pick on Boye Mafe, at least right now. You look at Brenton Cox, another guy who just hasn't quite put everything together. Had 10 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks last season for the Gators. I really think that he's showcasing the athleticism and his ability to get after the quarterback much better this year. Really in that Alabama game, I thought he was a guy that stood out. He did get engulfed at times when he was going up against Evan Neal. So, that obviously is to be expected with a guy of his stature and his size. But what I really like to see was he doesn't give up on his rushes. There was one of those, those plays where he's going up against Chris Owens. He tried to just lower his shoulder into the chest and try to drive him back, and then, showcase a rip move, stifled there, but didn't give up on the rush, spun back to the inside, and really hit Bryce Young hard for a sack as he was stepping up. Also loved his ability showing rush, dropping to the middle of the field, and that Bama loves those crossing routes, and he gets into that throwing lane, read Bryce Young's eyes, leaped for a near pick, just hit him in the hands. But what I love is, with Brenton Cox this season, is he's really showing much more versatility. I think he's showing some of that growth, and I'm really excited to see what he can do as the season progresses. Christopher Allen, Alabama, 6'4", 253. Look, I think everybody had him on the short list there for edge rushers. 13 tackles for loss, 6 sacks last season for the Crimson Tide. Ends up with a season-ending knee injury, and obviously out for the year. He's one of those guys, you hope that the explosiveness, he gets that back. That was one of the things that Dylan Moses really struggled to get his athleticism back after his knee tear. So I really hope for the best with Christopher Allen, because he's one of those guys. Imagine Alabama next year with Will Anderson and Christopher Allen collapsing the pocket from the edge, at that outside linebacker position. So I hope for a speedy recovery there for sure for Christopher Allen. Could he enter the draft? Sure, but I think coming back to Bama would probably be the best choice, especially when you get to play with number 31 there on the opposite side. I mentioned Jermaine Johnson earlier, 6'4", 260 pounds. He played with his hand in the dirt at times there for the Seminoles, but also was a stand-up rusher as well. And that's one of the things that I thought stood out to me was the versatility there. I think that scheme versatile definitely is something that's going to be exciting. The Georgia transfer, I thought against Notre Dame, he looked really solid. Started his rush to the outside, loops back around to get to the quarterback, stepping up in the pocket, untouched, coming downhill against the run, showed that speed on the jet sweep, gets up the field, drops the receiver in the backfield. I love the length. He plays really long, and you really like to see that. Took on the right tackle, Josh Lugg, able to beat that block to the inside, drop the running back for loss. So not only is he able to rush the passer with some versatility, he's also able to drop the running back behind the line of scrimmage. Good effort as well. Showed that the rush to the outside, runs by the left tackle, takes on the left guard, beats the left guard back to the inside to get to the quarterback for the sack. So you see a guy who just continues to work, wants to keep getting after the quarterback, that high motor intensity, something that's definitely going to bode well for his future as well. Georgia, I mentioned their linebackers. Nolan Smith, one of the better in terms of the outside linebackers, 6'3", 235 pounds. If you look at the stats, right now I pulled it. What's funny is 2.5 tackles for loss and 2.5 sacks in each of his 3 seasons there at Georgia currently. So it's pretty funny there. All the stats really kind of mirror each other. But I think this has been the best year for Nolan Smith, out of the gate. Against Clemson, you love to see that the physicality on third down, got his hands into the left tackle, drove him back, comes off of that block, and able to drop DJ Uiagalelei there on a third down on the opening drive. And against South Carolina, able to get outside, get to the quarterback on a QB run. 2 plays later, comes downhill in a hurry to drop the running back for no gain. So his ability to get outside and then also come downhill against the run wrapped up Kevin Harris before he could get going. We know he's a big running back. When he gets ahead of steam, he's difficult to bring down. Nolan Smith dropping him behind the line of scrimmage before he could get going. Uses his hands to slap the left tackle's hands away. Speed rush coming very quickly with that turn. Hits the quarterback there for a sack fumble, which was recovered by Quay Walker, another inside linebacker that we'll definitely have to keep an eye out for. I mentioned Merlin Robertson, a guy, 183 tackles in his career, has 4 interceptions, 4 pass breakups, 4 forced fumbles, always around the football. Hasn't had a sack since his sophomore season. Does have 15 tackles for loss. I worry about him from an athletic standpoint. How athletic is he really? He looks a little soft. So he's one of those guys that I have a question mark about. Brandon Smith out of Penn State, 6'3", 239, a guy that I think can play inside or outside, has some of that scheme versatility that you like, but a guy who I think, he's showing incredible range and an ability to, play both the not only get after the passer, play against the run, but also drop into coverage. You love his ability to read the plays in front of him, react quickly, and get downhill and drop guys in the open field. One of the things that I thought was really impressive against Auburn, Bo Nix finds John Samuel Schenker sitting down in the flat. Smith jumps the route, dropped the pick, but you saw some of the instincts there, and then you see the range as well on run plays, getting outside. So you see some of that fluidity. Keep an eye on number 12 there for Penn State. He's a guy that I think can definitely be moving up draft boards. Zakoby McClain, look, 113 tackles in 2020, 191 in his career. A guy who had a 100-yard interception return for a touchdown in 2019. A nose for the football, 13 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. He's undersized, so he's 6 foot, 219 pounds, but definitely a guy that flies around to the football. Don't see him, dropping into coverage quite as much as you'd like, especially with Auburn. They've got, the 5 defensive backs there, But, that's one of the things that's kind of a question mark for me. I know that Jacoby McLean has range playing sideline to sideline. I know he can come downhill against the run. Can he drop into coverage? That's really what I want to see more from with him. And then I mentioned Mitchell Agude. Really burst onto the scene as a junior there, as a JUCO transfer. 8 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks in just 7 games for the Bruins. So far this year, 4 forced fumbles. I think that's really what stands out to me is a guy that just knows what to do when he arrives at the ball. A guy that just continues to work hard, play hard. There was a 4th and 1 play there against Fresno State. Got in a 4-point stance, got really low. Able to get off the block, meet Ronnie Rivers in the hole with that low pad level. Fired into him, stood him up, then the leg drive to keep him shy of the first down. So, another guy, he just has that nose for the football. He's instinctive. Keep an eye out for number 45 there for UCLA. He's the guy that I think as the season goes along, more and more people will be talking about him. So those are the linebackers. Mike Jones, he's one of those guys, the son of the LA Ram. I'm sorry, I guess it was a St. Louis Ram. Mike Jones. And the Super Bowl hero for the Rams there against the Tennessee Titans, dropping Kevin Dyson there at the 1-yard line. But Mike Jones, I think he struggled a little bit, with that transition there to LSU, struggling to adjust. So kind of a wait and see, keep an eye on him. And then Kwoni Dang out of Cal, 6'6", 240 pounds, fluid athlete. Look, as a junior in 2019, 121 tackles, 7.5 for loss, had 8 pass breakups, just incredible range. Didn't see, had a drop off there for the Bears. Only played in 4 games. Kind of struggling to get things going for the Golden Bears there in 2021. But definitely a guy that I think has the athleticism to play at the next level. Right now, just looking like a late day 3 pick. Potentially a priority free agent, but definitely has that athleticism to really step up and be a guy to be talking about here later on. So those are my outside linebackers to keep an eye on. We're going to move on to the inside linebackers. And look, my number 1 inside backer, he's playing outside linebacker, and honestly, I think he's a guy that would play inside at the next level, and that's Mke Rose out of Iowa State. 6'4", 250 pounds. Look, 276 tackles in his career, 33.5 going for loss, 6.5 sacks, 6 interceptions, including 5 in 2020. 7 pass breakups as well. This guy can do a little bit of everything. He can drop into coverage, he can get after the quarterback when you need him to, makes a lot of plays, makes a living behind the line of scrimmage, so instinctive, like Peyton Wilson. If you want to know where the football is going to be, just follow Mke Rose, and he'll take you to the football. Nakobe Dean out of Georgia, 6 foot, 225 pounds. I'll tell you what, watching him so far this season, I'm impressed. I've gotten to see him play in a couple of games now, and it just seems like anytime you're trying to watch anybody else there for Georgia, you can't help but watch number 17 flying around to the football. He's shooting through the A gap, and dropping running backs for loss. Then he'll time his blitz, shooting through the B gap, runs through the right guard, bends to get to the quarterback for the sack. That was against Clemson. Gets out onto the perimeter versus Will Shipley, who caught a pass, read the throw, drove on the pass, missed the tackle. That's one of the things that you do see. Did that a couple of times. Whiffed in the backfield on a tackle by Kobe Pace. So he needs to clean that up a little bit. But I'll tell you what, man, this is a guy that just he's instinctive. He flies around to the football and he gets after the quarterback in against the pass. He can play the run. Has incredible range. He's a guy to me that I think the draft stock is going to continue to rise. More people are going to be talking about him. Christian Harris, they're out of Bama, 6'2", 232 pounds. Everyone was talking about him, hyping him up as the next great Alabama linebacker. And look, he had 79 tackles, 7 going for loss, 4.5 sacks. But what I haven't really seen is this guy's ability to drop and play in coverage. I've seen him play against the run, primarily downhill. You'll see him get outside, at times and run guys down, show a little bit of range. But man, I just, I worry about some of those Bama linebackers being able to drop into coverage. We saw that with Dylan Moses getting lost. Christian Harris, I thought, was exposed at times there against Florida, getting caught inside as well on some of the runs to the perimeter. Christian Harris, to me, I think he has the athleticism, he has the instincts, but I think he's kind of been underwhelming in my opinion so far in 2021. Devin Lloyd out of Utah, 6'4", 235 pounds, a guy that, look, he had 6.5 sacks in 2019, 91 tackles, 11 total tackles for loss, had an interception that he returned for a touchdown, 64 yards. Only got to play in 5 games in 2020, was on his way to another stellar season, had double-digit tackles for loss yet again, and through 3 games, 38 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and a sack. Another guy who's definitely instinctive. You watch number 0, and he just seems to be all over the field, making plays. I love the athleticism. I love his ability to get outside. I think he can drop into coverage. That's one of the things that you definitely see out of Devin Lloyd. And look, the range is absolutely there, and I think he is versatile. He's a guy that plays inside there for the Utes. I think that's probably where his home is. But look, he can also move outside and play outside linebacker because he has the athleticism to be able to do that. Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Week against Weber State, had 12 tackles, a forced fumble, and an interception in that game. You watched him against BYU, and you watched him chase down Tyler Algier down from the backside, only a 2-yard gain. This was a guy that definitely gets north and south and gets there in a hurry, and you loved seeing the athleticism, being able to chase him down from behind. One of the things that he does struggle with, though, is getting off blocks. He'll let that offensive lineman get into his body too much and struggles to get off some of those blocks, but if you allow him to play in space, man, Devin Lloyd, a lot of fun to watch. Owen Pappoe is another one, out of Auburn, 6'1", 226 pounds, a guy that has tremendous range. He's a thumper, a guy that's going to come up and hit you. Had 93 tackles a season ago, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. A guy that just flies around to the football. That's one of the things that you expect to see from an Auburn linebacker is guys flying to the football, and Owen Pappoe can absolutely do that, has the range playing sideline to sideline. Leo Chenal out of Wisconsin, 6'2", 250 pounds. Look, Leo Chenal hasn't seen the field yet, had the positive COVID test, sat out the first couple of games there for the Badgers, and look, Wisconsin could have used him against Penn State. They get him back in time for Notre Dame. Watch him fly around to the football. He's their most athletic and playmaking linebacker on the team, and that's with Jack Sanborn on the roster as well, a guy that we're going to talk about right after this. But definitely a guy that I know that the Badger fans are excited to have. With Jack Sanborn, 6'2", 236 pounds, a guy that's been there 4 years in Madison, 145 tackles. Look, 16 going for loss, 7.5 sacks, 4 interceptions, 4 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles, a guy that does just a little bit of everything. And he's not the tremendous athlete, and probably going to be a mid-day 3 pick. But look, Wisconsin linebackers are intelligent. They can make plays all over the field. And what I love about him is he does a really good job, with his blitzes, times them well. You see him on stunts, looping around, showing good speed, running by the offensive lineman, flattening out, getting to the quarterback. Against Penn State, Kevon Lee tried to reverse field back to Sanborn's side. He was able to get outside, staying at home, drop the running back in the open field for a loss. Later on in that game, shot through the A-gap, hit Lee in the backfield just after the handoff, timed his run up the middle with that blitz. Lee was able to spin away for 2 yards, but he was the one that disrupted and really made the play there on that run. And then 3rd and 3 downhill, gets to the B-gap, going to his right, able to drop the running back, meet him in the hole, stop him for no gain. Just the instincts, his ability to drop into coverage. He can be a 3-down linebacker. The problem is the athleticism. He's just an average athlete, in the grand scheme of things, but definitely a guy to be on everybody's radar. Henry To'o out of Alabama, 6'2", 225 pounds. Look, in his first 2 seasons there with the Tennessee Volunteers, 140 tackles, 12.5 going for loss, 4 pass breakups, and an interception. He's been the leading tackler there for Bama. Shows tremendous range. I think he plays out of position at times, though. I think that kind of gets him into trouble. And a guy that I think he's a decent athlete, but I don't see anybody that screams, a guy that has tremendous range, yet to make a tackle behind the line of scrimmage for Bama just yet. I think Bama, part of their struggles, has been, just the ineffectiveness of the inside linebackers. I think their secondary as well has been exposed at times, but I think, I'm really expecting to see Toto and Christian Harris step up their game if Bama wants to get out of the SEC unscathed. Nate Landman out of Colorado. This dude, man, you want to find a middle linebacker, look no further than Nate Landman. 6'3", 235 pounds, 311 tackles in his career, 41 goings for loss, also has 10 sacks, 3 interceptions, 10 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles. He's been there 4 years, 5 years, injured in 2020, only got to play in 5 games, off to just a tremendous season there. Through those 5 games, 53 tackles, 9 going for loss, 4 sacks. And look, prior to that had over 100 tackles in each of those seasons, 23 tackles for loss and 6 sacks, 6 pass breakups during that time as well. And this is a guy, look, you watched him play against Texas A&M, and he looked like he belonged, in the SEC as a linebacker. And I think that's a compliment to the athleticism. He's a guy that people aren't talking about so much, but the intelligence, you see that out there, high football IQ. He trusts his eyes. He was a step slow at times, so you do worry about the athleticism a little bit. But man, this guy, he'll fill holes downhill in a hurry. He'll drop into coverage, flows well to the football. There was one play where he forced the Aggie quarterback to throw behind his receiver. Landman was able to go ahead and pick it off. He'll blitz late coming downhill, hits the quarterback as he throws. Quarterback rolls out, chases him all the way to the perimeter and trips up the quarterback. That's one of the things that you see is just tremendous effort. Does a great job reading the quarterback's eyes. He's a sure tackler in the open field. Nate Landman, to me, is a guy, he's going to make an NFL roster. I wouldn't be surprised if he isn't starting at some point in his NFL career. Quay Walker, Georgia, 6'4", 240 pounds. Look, this is another one of those Georgia linebackers. I mean, that's one of the things that what can you say about Georgia and the linebackers right now? There's just so many of them. We could talk about Channing Tindall as well. But Quay Walker, number 7, lines up on the right side as the right inside linebacker, a run play with Marshawn Lloyd going to the wide side away from him, and show the speed to chase him down all the way to the sideline for only a 3-yard gain. Tremendous speed, tremendous effort, and that's the thing that you love about the Georgia linebackers is they just play with their hair on fire. High motor guys, excellent athleticism as well, and speed. A lot of fun to watch. Ventrell Miller, I think it's worth mentioning. Look, he tore his biceps, Florida without him, but another guy who is tremendously athletic, a guy that can play all over the field. 164 tackles, 15 going for loss, 7.5 sacks, 5 pass breakups in his career here with Georgia. I wouldn't be surprised if Ventrell Miller decides to come back to Gainesville for another season. We could see him enter the draft, but I'd love to see him come back for one more year and really solidify his draft stock. A couple of Penn State linebackers to mention that they also have a stable of linebackers, Ellis Brooks and Jesse Luketa. Brooks, 6'1", 235 pounds, a guy that, 12.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks in his career, 148 tackles. What stands out with Brooks, to me, is just the versatility to his game. And that's one of the things that I thought definitely stood out in that Wisconsin game. Being able to drop into coverage in the red zone, gets depth on a slant. Graham Mertz stares down the receiver. The ball was thrown too far out in front, for an incomplete pass. Thought he did a really good job of getting into coverage and getting that depth to force that throwaway. Squeezed the tight end Jake Ferguson on a route on the next play, 3rd down to the outside, tried to run a nod route, nod to the outside and takes it upfield. Quarterback tried to fit it in beyond Ellis Brooks, who had inside position. Ball fell incomplete. Does a good job wrapping up in the open field. That's one of the things that I definitely saw. One of the things that you saw against Auburn, rushing, going through the A-gap to flush Bo Nix, showed that ability to change directions and get back outside to track the quarterback. Not fluid enough to get to the quarterback. So, I mean, there is some stiffness in his hips, but what you really loved was he shoots through the A-gap, and then when Nix tried to get outside, you saw some pretty decent change of direction skills to continue that path and get after the quarterback and ultimately force a throwaway. And then with Jesse Luketa, he's more of that athlete. He's 6'3", 251 pounds, a guy who has 6 pass breakups in his career, so definitely a guy that you look forward to drop into coverage, and a guy who just has tremendous range. He's the athlete of the group. When you think of like Odafe Owe, the most recent example of those athletic linebackers, Jesse Luketa, I think he can play outside. I think he can play inside. Just really a lot of fun to watch at that linebacker position. Micah McFadden, a guy that I mentioned before, 6'2", 232 pounds, 24.5 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, 4 interceptions in his career. A guy who, look, I mentioned it before, he's the heart and soul of that Hoosier defense, and a guy that was getting into Desmond Ridder's face, blitzing coming downhill. There was one play where he hit Ridder as he was throwing the football, ended up going off the tight end's hand, and Marcelino McCrary Ball was able to pick off the pass. Just a guy who's instinctive. He plays around the football. Not the best athlete in the world, but look, number 47 is definitely a guy that I can really see playing at the next level. Edefuan Olofosho there for Washington. Look, 6'1", 239 pounds. I think this is his year to finally break out, and really step up. I thought he had a great game there against Michigan, 13 tackles, 1 going for loss. He's just going to continue to develop there at that linebacker position. And look, the Huskies need him to do that. With Zion Tupuola-Fatui out for the year, you need to have some playmakers there at that linebacker position, and I think Olofosho is definitely a guy to keep an eye on. 2 final guys to keep an eye out for. Aaron Hansford out of Texas A&M, 6'3", 240 pounds, actually played receiver his first year with the Aggies, transitions to that linebacker position. I think he's continuing to develop, but definitely a guy that's continuing to get better and better. And then another LSU linebacker who has incredible athleticism, and that's Damone Clark, 6'3", 245 pounds, a guy who has tremendous range. I think he can keep up with the running backs and the tight ends. I'm just looking to see him have a breakout year. Through 3 games for the Tigers, 26 tackles, always seems to be around the football. I think this is his year to really step up and showcase his ability to play the run, get after the quarterback a little bit, and then drop into coverage, because we've already seen some of that range and that ability. Had 63 tackles last year through 9 games. Definitely a guy to keep an eye out for LSU moving forward in SEC play. So those are the linebackers. Really, as I see it right now, I think there's a lot of room for movement. There's some guys that are definitely impressing, and some guys that you're really waiting for to break out. And hopefully we'll be able to really see some stellar play here as we head into October. Obviously, we get into conference play, and that's really where we start talking about some of these different matchups. And that's one of the things that I know I'm definitely excited for. I'm really looking forward to seeing us get into conference play and really be able to see some of these different matchups. It could very well be Michigan's year to finally beat Ohio State. Ohio State does look a little vulnerable. Really want to see Zach Harrison take that next level. A lot of people have him in their first round in their mock drafts. I still don't see it. I don't see the production. That's really what's worrying me. This weekend, Georgia's going to have an easy time there going to Vanderbilt. You have the number 12 Irish heading to Soldier Field to take on the Wisconsin Badgers, 18th in the country. Wisconsin's got to get that offense going if they want to beat Notre Dame. But defensively, I think they'll give some problems. Kyron Williams, I think, will end up being the answer there. I mentioned Zay Flowers. When we talked about the receivers, the hands were really the biggest thing that concerned me. But, man, you watch his routes. he really does a great job setting up the defensive back, getting him to open up his hips, especially on those in-breaking routes. Open those hips to the outside and then putting his foot in the ground so sudden coming back to the inside. We'll see him against Missouri. They've got a couple of bigger corners and Allie Green the fourth and Caleb Evans coming over from Tulsa. So be interesting to see what that looks like in terms of that matchup. As we continue working through things, let's see. We've got A&M taking on Arkansas. I'll be interested to see that defense. It's an improving defense there for Sam Pittman and the Arkansas Razorbacks. They'll be playing at AT&T Stadium, Arlington, Texas. Really want to see Treylon Burks, a showcase game for him there against the Aggies. That's going to be fun to watch. Clemson taking on NC State. Obviously, we're not going to be seeing Peyton Wilson running around there, but I think that game's going to be a lot closer. Clemson, they really need a guy to get things into gear. Iowa State, look, they're still ranked number 14 in the country, even after that loss to Iowa. Taking on Baylor. Really just want to see, tune into that game to watch Terrell Bernard play. I think he's worth tuning in and watching a little bit there. Purdue and George Karlaftis taking on Illinois. They're in Ross-Ade Stadium there in West Lafayette in Illinois. We continue working through the schedule. UCLA at Stanford, the number 24 ranked Bruins playing in Stanford Stadium. I want to really see that physicality. UCLA had that heartbreaker against Fresno State. Can they rebound? I'm looking for big things out of both Charbonnet and Britton Brown. Greg Dulcich, the tight end, let's get him involved early and often. And I really want to focus on Sean Ryan, that left tackle, and see what he can do there. See if he can open up some holes, especially going up against Thomas Booker, the guy who I think has a chance to end up being an early day 3 pick there for the Stanford Cardinal up front. Michigan State, number 20 ranked Spartans, are going up against Nebraska. Nebraska did a decent job there against Oklahoma. I thought Adrian Martinez, that was his best game that I've seen him play in a long time. I still think, as long as Kenneth Walker stays healthy, Michigan State is going to be tough to beat. Kansas State against Oklahoma State. That's going to be another fun game to watch. Battle of the unbeatens. The running game there for Oklahoma State. Who's going to be the guy, though, to really put pressure on the quarterback? Is it going to be Tyler Lacey there for the Cowboys? I think Kansas State's going to have a little bit too much on the ground, especially with Deuce Vaughn. Alabama going to have a field day there at home against Southern Miss. OU, though, it's a later game there in Norman, 6:30 local time. Number 4 ranked Sooners taking on West Virginia. That's going to be an interesting game. You're going to have the likes of Kennedy Brooks and Eric Gray going up against Letty Brown, the running backs there. And, I think OU, this is going to be a statement game for them. I think if you see Spencer Rattler step up, you really want to see Nick Benito and Perion Winfrey, Isaiah Thomas, a lot of the players that people are talking about. David Ugwebu, a lot of people have him, they're high on him for this year's draft. I just haven't seen enough production out of him to really warrant putting him into my rankings. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think they're poised for a big game, and really looking forward to seeing what can happen there. Washington, they've struggled so far this year. They're going up against Cal. That could be a rebound game there for the Huskies. Tune in, watch. Jackson Kirkland, can he rebound? I think that Michigan game really kind of rattled him a little bit. You've got Cade Otton, the tight end. You got a couple of really good corners in Trent McDuffie and Kyler Gordon. I think Washington runs away with that game. They're in Seattle. Oregon taking on Arizona. Arizona's really struggling. I think that's a game for Oregon to really, if Kayvon Thibodeau is playing, he can end up having a huge game. USC at home against Oregon State. Oregon State has some nice linebackers. They've got Avery Roberts, Omar Spates. Those are a couple of guys to really keep an eye out for there. I think USC will end up having a little bit too much firepower, as long as Keaton Slovis can look a lot like Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart, obviously the torn meniscus, he's out. Keaton Slovis coming back. Keaton he needs to get rid of the ball quicker. he holds on to the ball way too long, and that was the thing that you appreciated about Jackson Dart, was he was very decisive. The ball was out of his hands very quickly, and was spreading the ball around, wasn't just staring down one receiver. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Look, Washington State also played a lot of man coverage against Jackson Dart. They weren't dropping into zone like a lot of the teams like to do, and that's really where a lot of the troubles are with Graham Harrell's air raid offense. So USC late game there at the Coliseum, and then finally ASU going up against Colorado. You're going to get to see Nate Landman go up against Jaden Daniels, and then obviously Arizona, Merlin Robertson and Damian Butler. I didn't mention him, but he's definitely a solid linebacker in his own right. Number 20 there for the Sun Devils. They'll go up against a pair of running backs, Jarek Broussard and Alex Fontenot. I think that's really where Colorado, if they want to, they've got to play sound defense and run the football, ball control there against that high-powered offense for the Sun Devils. Watch out for Rachaad White in that game. So that's really what to expect this weekend. I'm going to try to get a podcast out here in the next couple of days. We'll talk about the defensive backs, the corners, the safeties. There's more to this class than just Derek Stingley and Kyle Hamilton. I promise we'll get through all of that as well. So until next time, enjoy your weekend, everyone. Enjoy a weekend of college football and obviously the NFL on Sunday and Monday. And until next time, for ReadyForTheDraft.com, this has been the Ready for the Draft podcast. I've been your host, Gregg Schutze. Stay safe, everyone. Take care. And until next time, I am out of here.